But anyways, this talk is about preventing RSI for programmers, or really anyone who's using a computer every day. And we will start with a small disclaimer. I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice, so you can kind of take it as you will. I don't think I've really ever had RSI. I've experienced weird flare-ups, but you can kind of take my advice like that you would of, say, a bald barber, you know? So I don't think about RSI every day, but when I do, it scares the hell out of me. If I can't type, I can't program. If I can't program, I don't have a job. So you can follow that line of thought all the way until homelessness. So I need to be able to use a computer comfortably in order to meet the very bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I believe thinking about RSI every day might actually save you from it. So RSI is repetitive stress injury or repetitive strain injury. I might use them interchangeably throughout this, but it's an umbrella term for any number of pain-related injuries that is caused by a repetitive motion. So this could be anything from your hands going numb to maybe you have some like shoulder tingling, all the way to pain that is so debilitating that you can't use a keyboard at all. Symptoms can go away pretty quickly. They might only last a few minutes, or they could actually last anywhere from hours to days to maybe a lifetime. So, as computer touchers, we are most likely to see the effects of RSI in our hands, shoulders, and neck, knees and toes. But you might be more familiar with a common form of RSI known as tennis elbow. So that is irritation in the soft tissue connecting the forearm muscle to the elbow, and the tissue doesn't have a chance to repair itself or heal from the repetitive motion of swinging a tennis racket. However, we're not athletes, we're not playing tennis, so how are we developing the same kind of injury that they are? And a little caveat, everyone's different, so you can't say, if you do X, you will absolutely develop RSI, or if you don't do X, you will never develop it. But you can think about the way that you interact with a computer. So if you're typing and your palms are completely flat on your desk and you are angling them upwards to reach your keyboard, you're probably putting unnecessary pressure on the soft tissue in your wrists. That could cause you to develop RSI. If your desk is too tall, you have to raise your arms to accommodate that. You're putting pressure on your shoulders. That could cause you to develop RSI. And you might not notice the impact of these at first, but you probably will throughout your lifetime. So think about going for a hike. You don't feel sore the day of. You start to feel it the day after, or even the day after that. RSI is similar. You won't know that started until it's too late. And if you're not scared yet, I think you're about to be. You can't cure RSI. You can only manage it. So if I destroy my hands, there's no panacea that's going to fix everything and let me go back to my terrible habits. That being said, though, there are measures you can take that'll help you prevent it from developing, or at the very least, slow its development. The first of these is exercise. You probably don't get enough exercise during the day from your job because we all work a desk job. So it's important that you be more explicit in this. You need to be using your muscles with some regularity so they can have a chance to strengthen and recover. One form of exercise that I like to practice is stretching. So there are specific stretches you can follow that are targeting RSI things. I've done some of them enough that I remember them offhand, so we'll go through those now. The first one is we will put our hands together like we're, praying. And if you push your fingers together and pull your palms apart, you'll feel your fingers stretching. And that's a good one to do. It's pretty basic. Another one that you can is, if you're wearing glasses, take those off because we're going to touch our eyes. And you're going to make an OK symbol with your hand. And you will hold it over your eye. This is a great opportunity to take a screenshot if you want. But you'll feel that in your forearm. And you can alternate hands and just keep doing that. I like to do these when I'm taking a break, which is something you should do to help prevent RSI. So I have a bad habit of getting like goblin mode, essentially, when I'm working. If left to my own devices, I will kind of curl up into weird positions and cross my legs and things that are definitely not good for me. And if you are positioned suboptimally, taking a break is going to let you correct that. So if you're not already taking breaks, you could do something like a Pomodoro session. So you're going to work for 25 minutes and then you'll take a 5-minute break. And in that 5-minute break, you can stand up, walk away from your computer, and do some stretches, or at the very least, give your body a chance to correct itself from going goblin mode. This has the added benefit of giving your eyes a break, which is also great for their long-term health. So, your keyboard is the device you're interacting with the most on a daily basis, and one way to prevent RSI is to limit how much typing you're doing on it. So one way I like to do this is by having text snippets that expand. The first of these is typing @ will expand to my email. I have the displeasure of having a kind of long name, so my email is really long to type. But with this, I only have to do 2 characters, and I get my entire email address. It's perfect for logging into different websites. To take that a step further, I do a lot of testing of registration on itch.com, and with that, I need a lot of email addresses. So if I do !! I get not John George Sample plus a UUID that's random every time. So I get a throwaway email address that normally, if I were typing this on my own, probably just smash the keyboard, slap it around, and in turn, maybe I'm bending my fingers in a weird way. But by doing this, I get to only type 2 characters, and I get that email, which is perfect for me. The last snippet I'll talk about is the term user story. So this is all one word together. I use this when I'm working in Asana writing tickets because it'll expand to this entire thing. So user story, acceptance criteria, technical considerations, so on and so forth. Instead of having to hunt down an old ticket and copy and paste or type this out every time, one word gets me this entire thing, which is really helpful. Somewhere else you could be doing less typing is by aliasing things in your shell. This is a snippet of my shell aliases. These are all Git related, but these are not even all of my Git aliases. I think you should alias anything that's more than like 3 or 4 characters that you're typing on a daily basis. So in this list, a couple favorites of mine are GCODP, which of course stands for Get Check Out Dev Pull. So by typing those 5 characters, I am checking out dev and pulling the latest. Something I do pretty frequently, and I can do it really fast. I also like GCL, which is Git Commit Lint. So if you've ever pushed something up, ESLint yells at you because you forgot a space. I find that really annoying, and I hate to have to type a whole commit message about that. And because it happens to me pretty frequently, I've made an alias for it. So I just have to do GCL, and I get that commit message typed up. I'm actually thinking about making GCL responsible for do more than just that. I also wanted to push my changes, and I think that's something you should be thinking about. Is you should be adding new aliases, but you should also be evaluating the ones that you have, and how can you make them smarter and responsible for doing more stuff to save you more typing. And because this is me giving a talk, we're going to talk about Vim very quickly. Vim has a concept of leader commands. So what you see is I can type my comma key followed by a couple characters, and what it does will perform an action. So in this list, let's see, I have comma GDD, which will open a split in diff my current file against what is live in the development branch. So here's a GIF of that. You can see my keystrokes as I'm typing. This is something I do a lot, and it's awesome because if I didn't have this, I would be typing :gdiff split space dev whenever I wanted to do this. That's a lot of typing. I'm a very lazy person, so this is great for me. This will save you millions of keystrokes over the course of your career, and that's a non-negligible number. All right, a different way you can combat RSI is by having ergonomic hardware. This could also be called throwing money at the problem, and don't worry, it'll be a lot of money. So, starting off with keyboards, it's the device you're interacting with the most. The majority of ergonomic keyboards will follow the same few basic principles. They will likely be split. When you're using a traditional keyboard, you are angling your hands inwards. By breaking the keyboard into 2 different pieces, you can keep your arms totally parallel, and this will encourage better ergonomics. It will also most likely be ortholinear. This just means that the keys, instead of being staggered, are going to be in a perfectly straight column. This means there's less distance between the keys, so you're doing less straining to move around and hit keys. And lastly, they will all follow this idea of pinky weak, thumb strong. You might have heard of the term Emacs pinky. So Emacs is this inferior editor that relies on modifier keys like control for a lot of things. And on a modern keyboard, control's kind of far away. You have to stretch your pinky to reach it. Um, so Emacs users have developed this thing called Emacs Pinky, where it's not uncommon to get RSI in your pinky. Now, you might wonder why Emacs would use a modifier key that's so far away, but it was not always this inconvenient. So Emacs was influenced by what's called the Space Cadet keyboard. Get a picture of that up. And you can see control on this keyboard is to the left of the spacebar and was easily hit by using your thumb. So you would not develop RSI because your thumb is pretty strong. And that was something that they knew when this keyboard was created. And then the next few keyboards we will look at look nothing like this. So this is an Ergodox. You can buy a kit to assemble one of these if you want to have a bunch of fun soldering it yourself, or you can buy a pre-assembled one, like in this picture. I mentioned ergonomic hardware is expensive. This keyboard will run you about $350. You see it has all of the modifier keys at your thumbs and what are called thumb clusters. So things like control, delete, spacebar, enter, all of those are on the thumbs because they're pretty resilient. This also has an ortholinear layout. This is easiest to see in a picture rather than words because those keys are all in a very straight column. And there's also tenting on this keyboard. So those metal legs just allow you to angle it to angle it to an angle that is comfortable for you to type on. There's also the Kinesis Advantage 2, which has a lot of things in common with the Ergodox. It has an ortholinear layout. It has thumb clusters for modifier keys. Where it's different, though, is it is one piece. However, it is large enough that your arms are still pretty parallel. So you're getting the benefit of that. The big difference is the keys on this keyboard will sit in what's called a key well, or this concave bowl. So you rest your hands on the plastic in front and lower your fingers into the key well to type. Supposedly, this is more ergonomic. And for anyone in Pittsburgh, I own both of these keyboards. They're on the shelf behind me. If you want, I'd be happy to bring them in if you want to play around with it. Oh, and Kinesis makes a foot pedal, which is incredible. I don't have one, but I want one. If your thumbs are strong, your feet are probably even stronger. So by default, this comes with like mouse mapping. So like left pedal is left click, middle pedal is middle click, and so on. I want to get one of these just to do weird stuff in Vim, like make it run my tests or switch different modes. But like I said, ergonomic hardware is expensive and it's hard to justify a fun joke like that. If you didn't want to spend money on a new keyboard, you could try changing the layout of your current keyboard. It will only cost you your sanity. So the chances are you're probably using QWERTY, and QWERTY is not the most efficient way or the most efficient layout. You could try Dvorak, which claims that it'll require less finger motion, which in turn gives you increased typing speed and reduces the chance of a repetitive strain injury. So in Dvorak, 70% of typing is done on the home row. Let's take a quick minute to appreciate how different Dvorak is from our QWERTY layout. There is also Colmac, which is interesting because it uses QWERTY as its base layout, but it changes 17 keys. So it claims to be easier to learn than Dvorak because it's mostly QWERTY, but with some small modifications. And where Dvorak does 70% of typing on the home row, Colmac does 74%. So a little bit better. This is a frequency map of keys on QWERTY. So you'll notice some of those darkest keys are not in the home row. So only 32% of typing is done on the home row with QWERTY. And here is a heat map of Colmac. So this is the difference. Those darkest keys are all on the home row. So you're not reaching for keys as often. So if keyboards are the first piece of hardware you're interacting with the most, mice are probably the second. And you have a few different choices here. So you could do a trackball. So instead of moving your hand or your arm, you could just rely on your thumb to move the ball around. Like we've discussed, thumbs are pretty strong, and this could help prevent RSI. Or there are vertical mice. So when you're standing, your hands kind of fall naturally to your side. In a vertical mouse, it's kind of like you're shaking someone's hand. You don't have to round your shoulder, which is pronating your wrist. So like the image says, this is alleviating pressures in wrist joint and reduces risk of cramping. I've never used one of these, so I can't speak to it, but they do look fun. And there's also vertical keyboards. I do not have one of these, though I wish I did. This is the safe type keyboard. This will run you about $275. You can see you're going to be typing at a vertical angle, and there's mirrors, so you can see what you're typing, which I just think is hilarious. All right, I'm going to do a lot of hand waving at this part and say that there's a good deal of science that proves sitting long term is bad for your health. And because of that, you should buy a standing desk. It has the benefit of letting you stand, but also it allows you to find the best height that works for you, even when you're seated. So your elbow and your arm, when it's resting on your desk, should be between 90 and 120 degrees. That is a number that comes from OSHA. They have a ergonomic checklist. And a standing desk allows you to reach that 90 to 120 sweet spot. Additionally, your monitor on your desk should be eye level. You should be looking at the center of it. You should not need to angle your head anyway to see what you need. And a good metric for this, your monitor is probably too low. If you find yourself resting your head on your hand, it means you're trying to get a little bit lower and in a more comfortable position, and that's a good tell that your monitor needs to be raised. Now, I was guilty of that, and that's when I knew it was time to raise my monitor. Chairs. They're likely not going to fix your RSI, but if you're thinking about ergonomics more holistically, including a chair, maybe you'll be inclined to have better habits, and maybe that can prevent RSI. I have worked with people who have sworn by both of these. So your classic exercise ball chair, and something that I was less familiar with is a kneeling chair. I've never tried these, but once again, they look fun. Something else I don't have experience with is wrist braces. So if you're using these, you're probably at the point you've already developed RSI and you're just trying to not injure yourself any further. But these are going to take pressure off of your affected areas and give you some extra support. If you wanted a less committed way of giving yourself extra support, you could try buddy taping. So let's say you had Emax pinky. You could tape your pinky to your ring finger, and this will essentially train yourself to not try to spread your pinky, but instead move your entire hand. Do an action that is more comfortable and is more resilient. Doesn't cost anything, assuming you have some tape laying around, so why not? But something else that doesn't cost anything, and I think everyone here should absolutely do, is to remap caps lock. If you do one thing today, caps lock is worthless. It is prime real estate on the keyboard, and it is spent on something so stupid. I have mine remapped to control. You could get fancy with this and do like two functionalities, one when you hold it and one when you tap it. I don't care what you do it, like what you remap it to, just do something besides caps lock. You will find so much more benefit. All right, and I think this is probably the most important slide. So RSI threatens your ability to make a living, right? That ability to work is an asset, and like any asset, you should do what you can to insure it. The chances are the insurance you get through your job is not good enough to cover something like RSI. So what you likely have is any occupation disability insurance, and that is if you become disabled in a way that prevents you from doing any job, you will receive some money. I, as a programmer, if I blow my wrists out doing with RSI problems, I might still be able to fold clothes or something, so I wouldn't qualify for any occupation disability because I could perform some job. You can, however, go on your own and get own occupation disability insurance. So this is, you can't do your job. So same situation, I've blown out my wrist because of RSI, I can't program, well, then this would cover me. The one important thing to mention here is you have to start own occupation disability insurance before you have any formal diagnosis of RSI. So unfortunately, if that has already been recorded medically for you, you missed the boat on own occupation disability insurance. Like I mentioned in the beginning, that I'm not a doctor, I also don't know anything about insurance. Take all of this with a grain of salt. And we're getting to the end. If you just want to try to prevent using your hands for anything, you do have some options. Handsfreecoding.org has a lot of great resources. It talks about things like an eye tracking mouse. So instead of moving your hand or your thumb, the camera is going to watch your eyes and it'll position your mouse accordingly. There are things like Talon Voice, which Emily Shea has an awesome talk about this, where you are dictating um, programs, and it's actually not as painful as you'd expect it to be. And lastly, there is Plover, which is really cool. It's an open source stenography engine. So you can use this with a regular keyboard. You can plug in a steno machine if you happen to have one of those laying around, and you can use stenography to program. Really interesting to watch. And you can find different talks about that on their website. All right. Hopefully, you're slightly less afraid of RSI, or at the very least, you feel more knowledgeable about it. But that is all I got.